So throughout the month of Elul, the clergy here at Temple Bethel have been sharing video reflections on a weekly basis around themes of Elul. And earlier this week, I put out a video on our theme of turning toward repair, toward relationship, and toward concrete acts of presence and responsibility. And in it, I talked about this tool that I learned at a leadership training at summer camp years ago, but that has stuck with me ever since. And it's called the 2 doors. Essentially, when we are facing a conflict with someone, when something is really nagging at us or irking us, there are 2 doors that we can choose. It gets real Monty Hall here. We have door number 1 or door number 2. Door number 1 is the option to let it go, to leave the frustration behind and move forward. It's not a denial of what happened. It doesn't mean pretending we were never hurt or acting as if nothing ever happened. It means making an intentional decision that this particular frustration does not need to be pursued. And when we do that, we give up the right to keep rehearsing it, retelling it, and allowing it to shape the relationship. The trick to door number 1 is that when you let it go, you have to really let it go. We cannot choose door number 1 and then continue complaining about the situation to our spouse or our friends or our coworkers. We cannot claim to have moved on while silently keeping score. Door number 1 sounds deceptively simple, but truly releasing a grievance is much harder than we might imagine. So that was door number 1. Our other option is door number 2. And door number 2 asks us to turn toward the conflict, to have an honest and, let's be honest, often uncomfortable conversation. For those of us who avoid conflict, which I think is probably most of us, door number 2 can feel intimidating. We imagine in our minds how the other person is going to react, and we always imagine the worst possible response, the most ridiculous, over-the-top response. But rarely is that actually how it goes. Door number 2 allows us to name what happened, to listen, to begin the work of repair, to take agency over the situation at hand. Where most of us find ourselves in trouble is that more often than not, we choose neither door. We neither release our frustration nor do we address it. We tell ourselves that we're choosing door number 1, that it's not worth bringing up. But then we go ahead and tell 6 other people about it. We replay the moments again and again. We complain to everyone except the person who could actually fix it. And that is how we end up in what this tool calls the resentment zone. It's not actually called the resentment zone, but the other terminology I couldn't say from the BEMA. So we'll call it the resentment zone. And this is the place where nothing is resolved, frustration festers, and where we get stuck. Over the course of this week, as people have watched the video, so many have told me how much they appreciated this tool. And to be honest, I'm not surprised. I mean, I use it all the time, although I could probably use it more, and I recommend it to folks all the time. I think it resonates because we recognize how easy it is to stay in the resentment zone. It's so hard to take action, whether that action is release or confrontation. Inertia is incredibly powerful. Sometimes remaining stuck feels safer than moving toward the uncertainty of what comes next. And this pattern is not unique to us. It's not unique to the year 2026. In fact, we see it in the Torah. Right now, we're reading the book of Deuteronomy, Moses' very long farewell address to the Israelites. And in it, he recounts everything that has happened during the journey, the highs, but also the lows, the moments of faith and courage, but also the moments of fear, frustration, and resistance. Again and again, the Israelites find themselves caught between what they have left and what they have yet to become. They cannot return to Egypt, but they're afraid to move forward. And so they remain emotionally stranded, idealizing the past, resisting the future, and kvetching. So much kvetching. Chapters of kvetching. And they remember Egypt not as it truly was, but as something simpler and safer. It was neither. But resentment and fear have a way of distorting our memory. The familiar can begin to feel preferable simply because the future is unknown, and that is scary. Moses knows that he's about to die, that he will not enter the promised land with the Israelites. He will not be there to guide them, to challenge them, to keep them moving forward, to help their complaints stay at bay. And so in his final words, he reminds them that they cannot remain caught between slavery and freedom forever. Choose life, Moses tells them, uvacharta b'chaim. Choose life because refusing to choose will not protect you from the consequences of standing still. That is the spiritual invitation of Elul. The central work of this season is Teshuvah. We often translate it as repentance, but it means to turn or return. It's a change in direction, a reorientation. Teshuvah requires movement. It requires choice. It asks us to turn away from the patterns that have kept us stuck and to turn toward the person, the responsibility, or the truth that requires our attention. Elul invites us to notice when we have become stuck in the resentment zone. What hurt are we still carrying? What conversation have we postponed? Who have we kept at a distance? Where have we mistaken avoidance for peace? Elul asks us to decide what belongs behind door number 1 and what requires door number 2. And I love the image of a door because walking through it requires movement. We cannot remain planted where we are and expect our lives or our relationships to change. And yet, crossing that threshold is only the beginning. The real work happens on the other side, following through, staying present through discomfort, listening honestly, and accepting responsibility for what comes next. We may not repair every relationship before the new year. In fact, I can promise you we won't. We may not resolve every hurt, but each of us can identify one place where we have been standing still and take one honest step forward. Because Teshuvah begins when we stop waiting for something to change and choose to change it ourselves. Shabbat Shalom.